On this last side of the Principle-Centered Leadership program, Stephen discusses his convictions concerning Principle-Centered Leadership and suggests some immediate actions which can increase our effectiveness as leaders.
Let me just give a couple of real strong convictions. Then we'll go into the how, and then we'll look at some problems and really test how practical this is. And that's where I think we're going to get some real questions and comments. Here's my conviction. I believe that you will have more of every good thing when principles are at the center. I believe you will have more of your family, that you'll be more open to them, and they'll be more open to you. They'll think aloud in your presence because you're soft and you're safe. I think you'll have more of your work because you'll focus on things that are truly important, that have high leverage in them, rather than just things that the environment presses upon you that are seemingly urgent but not important. And that you'll have the courage to trust people, to use leverage, to delegate more, and to be happy for their successes. You'll have more of the best of your boss because you won't empower your boss's weakness. You'll have more of a complementary relationship, meaning your strength can compensate for her weakness. Or you'll have more ability to let your weakness be compensated for by someone else's strength. It's a complementary. You trust more. You can empathize easier. And you can synergize and produce solutions that both parties feel better about. You'll just be much more effective in the work. I think you'll have more friends, true friends, friends that are loyal and to whom you are loyal. And you care about them, and you care about their children, and you care about your friends' friends. And you help young people be brought into your family circle, particularly those that come out of shame-based homes and identities that are utterly dysfunctional and need someone that will take an interest, not just today and now, but for the long run, and who asks questions and listens and really cultivates that relationship over the long run. I think you'll have more success in everything that happens. You'll reap more of the fruits of that success. But you'll see it all as a means to an end. You'll start to have a higher sense of stewardship about your possessions, about money, about the earth, the ecology, the environment, a sense of trusteeship, of custodianship. Why? Because you're basically at peace within yourself, and you don't need to exploit things and people. You're not always in a rush and have hurry sickness, because you're working on the fundamental things that matter most. Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least. You have the wisdom that helps you distinguish between the two, and the courage to act on that wisdom. I'm very sincere. I'm absolutely persuaded you'll have more. Now, to some degree, this approach represents a moral force, and I think that it will sometimes stir up resistance where people do not want that force represented. But you smile a lot, and you don't make a big deal out of it. You don't get your head into someone who's opposing you. You let them have their dues and their way in their stewardship, see? You don't overreact. You're not geared to them. If they happen to be in the audience, you don't gear your whole speech to that person's mindset. If it happens to be your member of your family, you don't have to gear the whole family culture to nurture this person that may be, say, into a very selfish stage. I think you really have more of all good things when you're principle-centered. Now that is a strong and deep conviction. You want to reason with me on it? Questions or comments?
Are we saying that when we are confronted with someone that has a lot of negative energy, Are we saying that sometimes it's better to sidestep it rather than confront it with positive energy?
Maybe if you do confront it with positive energy, the very thing they're opposing is your positive energy. And it'll just exacerbate. It'll kind of ignite the fury inside them. But sidestep. Don't pay that much attention. You get into a large group and you have a very strong, say, dissident minority that doesn't want to be part of a responsible dialogue. Don't pay that much attention. Don't give it too much articulation opportunity. Give it its proper opportunity. Everyone should have respect, but it shouldn't dominate. And I think that people that are principle-centered have that presence of mind. They have that cool, so they don't have to be so controlled by those things. But a lot of people don't want principles. They want specific actions and steps that they can take, because then it's easily outlined. But that violates the whole concept of empowerment and helping other people become increasingly independent. So you have to live a little with the disappointment of some people that want immediate satisfactions, immediate quick-fix success formulas. They will not work. Let me give a metaphor to illustrate. I heard this story about a speaker that used to hold up a large container. And into that container, he would put all these rocks until it went right up to the top. And then he'd say, "Is it now full?" And everyone would say, "Well, yes." Then he'd reach down in his bag of tricks and he'd pull out all these pebbles and gravel. And then he'd pour a lot of that in until it was just bulging. "Is it now full?" "Yes." And he'd reach down to his bag of tricks and he'd pull out all the sand. And he'd put that in and shake it. And more sand would go in. By this time, everyone was very aware of this bag of tricks. And he said, "Is it now full?" And everyone would say, "No." And he'd pull out the water and fill it up, see. Becoming principle-centered is very much like that. You're dealing with big things, big rocks. But most people have their life full of gravel and sand. It takes all the spaces. So they try to put rocks in it. But there's no place to put it. So instead they put it on the wall. Or they put it on some card for their desk, or their purse, or their wallet. Because there's already so much there. Those habits is like a thicket, deep into that lifestyle. In some way, there has to be an emptying of this vessel. In some way, there has to be like a new start. But that's the way it is. It's filled up. How do you empty so that you can put the big central principles first? Because they're the ones that will dominate the way you think and act, and is the true source of your security, wisdom, guidance, and power, see? How do you empty it? What do you do? Well, what did this country do? That is, the United States of America do, as an illustration. When it established itself, it too had to form this so-called mission statement. But it had to be a form of a constitution that was the supreme law by which everything would be governed. What did it do? It had to fight a revolutionary war. And it had to go through a very difficult and protracted and contentious at times constitutional convention. And I suggest it's an extremely powerful metaphor or an example of the same process that we must do as individuals and as families and as organizations at any level, not just the overall company or organization, but a division, a department, a work group. It requires us to really get serious about asking the questions, what is it we are about, and what are these principles that we really value, that we can share? The word culture and share are synonymous. Yes?
Doesn't it have to begin, though, with a verbalization, an acceptance, and an understanding of the fact that the old centers don't work?
That's what the Declaration of Independence said.
Right.
that it reached a point where the old alliances would no longer work and small reformations were not sufficient. It took a fundamental declaration of independence and separation. And I think that if a person can come to the point where they're hurting enough by being centered on other things to where they say, I have had it. I'm not going to stand it anymore. Like some people have done when they got into a significant weight reduction. I have had it. They stood in the mirror for the last time, jumped up and down and saw everything move in so many directions. I have had it. Or they've been involved in some deteriorating relationship that nevertheless is powerfully influencing the entire culture, and they reach the point of kind of utter disgust. I have had it. I'm going to make a break. Now, many people are motivated only by the force of circumstances. If you could become an idealist enough to where you educate your conscience sufficiently on principles, it'll stir up your own internal dissidence, and the pain will be a kind of psychological, not so much a physical and social pain. It'll be kind of a spiritual pain. I'm just not at peace climbing this ladder of success and discovering it's leaning against the wrong wall. I just don't like that anymore, see? I don't want to be part of that. Or, I've had it with mediocrity. I've had it with just slovenly make-do processes. Now, if they're pressed enough by, say, the international marketplace for quality and for service, then the circumstance itself drives them to this awareness. We must do something fundamental. But more mature is the person who can act based upon awareness of the principles and the idealism that it stirs inside their consciousness. I want to be better. Because what it really does is it unleashes the natural tendencies inside people toward growth, toward excellence, toward progress, toward quality. That is natural to our nature. It may not be natural to the social mirror's definition of our nature, and it may be totally acceptable out there, but it isn't in here. And the more principled you become, the less the social conscience drives you, the less you're concerned about what people think. In fact, it's very ironic. The more you care about what people think for your security, the less you can afford to care about what they think. Because where do you go and hide when you find out they don't like you? The opposite is also the case. The more you don't care about what people think for your personal security, the more you care about what people think for your effectiveness. You're very, very open, very receptive. So this whole process of a constitutional convention and a revolutionary war and the emptying out and the idealism that comes by educating your conscience, to me, is central to the how question. How do we become principle-centered? And I honestly believe it involves some sacrifices and some suffering. But in a sense, the other suffering is worse. It's like the risk of riskless living. I talked to someone the other day who said, I cannot brook this kind of lifestyle anymore. I just can't see in a decade from today being unchanged and having any sense of happiness. I cannot deal with it anymore. It's reached the point where I've got to come to grips and make some fundamental changes. But I know those changes will be painful, not painless, and that it will strike at many, many deep things. If you rip out those pebbles and that sand and try to get that in, you're ripping stuff out. So it's not that easy. I believe if a person will just do one simple thing on a regular basis, it makes it relatively painless. Some pain, but not too much to where it discourages them and they want to give up. Just do this. Start very small. Make and keep a promise. Even if that means that I'm going to get up in the morning a little earlier and exercise. Even if it means I'm not going to watch television on the following 4 nights. even if it means I am going to subordinate taste to nutrition for a week. But be sure that you don't violate that commitment. And be sure you don't overmake it because you're temporarily psyched to make some commitment. Think very carefully about the full reality that you're in. And based on that very careful thought, move into it and say, I will do this. And then no matter what, do it. What happens little by little is that your faith in yourself starts to go up. And if the thing you've committed to do is principle-based, you gradually are becoming a little more principle-centered. You keep the promise to yourself, and your own integrity account goes up. You have a little more peace of mind. I had a friend who really got disgusted and reached the point where the friend got so enamored with this concept. He said, every time I write in my little book that I promise to do this, I will always do it, no matter what. So, if he didn't want to change and know he should have, what would he do? Write it down. And he kept to that, see. It was kind of his mechanism, but the power to take an oath. But that's very like, in a sense, the launching of those great rockets by NASA. Pulls away from the Earth. The gravity pull, see, and tries to go through the atmosphere that surrounds the Earth. That's the environment. And most of the energy on those major launches was spent in the first few minutes, the first few miles, even though they went hundreds of thousands of miles. And that's exactly what happens. You go through a kind of internal struggle to decide, wait a minute, am I willing to declare myself? Am I willing to commit? No, I'm not. Well, then don't. Back off. Don't risk your integrity. Back off. Start smaller. Go somewhere else. Start on something else. Build it till gradually your sense of honor becomes greater than your motives. Let me say a couple of concluding things. I would like to quote a philosopher, a Frenchman. His name is Chardin. Teilhard Chardin. And it reflects my conviction, and I sense yours, that we are more than things, and that it requires a different paradigm of how we manage and lead and communicate with people. He said this, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Life is a mission, not a career. And I wish you all the best in your missions. Thank you.
This concludes the Principle-Centered Leadership audio learning program. We hope your experience with this material has been beneficial as you continually strive to increase your leadership effectiveness. For information on additional products and services from the Covey Leadership Center, please call 1-800-255-0777.